This video is sponsored by Micro Center. If you could sit down and have a conversation with anybody on the planet, dead or alive, who would you choose? For many people, that's a tough question, but for as long as I can remember, I've always answered quickly and without any hesitation, Scott, the guy from the Domino's Pizza Hatsune Miku promotional video.
Hello everyone, I'm Scott, president of Domino's Pizza. Have you heard of Hatsune Miku? Today, I'd like to announce a new collab.
The man you see here, the once president and CEO of Domino's Pizza Japan, has been a subject of my fascination for something like 8 years now. This video, intended to promote a collaboration between Vocaloid Hatsune Miku and Domino's Pizza's Japan branch, is one of the most powerfully awkward and hilarious videos ever made, and at the center of it lies Scott.
The challenge was successfully carried out, and this new collaborative app was produced.
This man's unique mannerisms and stilted delivery made him an instant legend for a certain subset of internet users. You really get the sense watching this commercial that this man was plucked off the street and forced, seemingly at gunpoint, to explain who Hatsune Miku is, and the result is truly magical.
I knew our talented Domino's Pizza crew could work together and create great Vocaloid songs.
The scene set by this advertisement is just indelibly hilarious. It's hard to beat seeing an aging American businessman sweatily explaining through a forced grin who the most popular Vocaloid character of all time is, something every single person in the ad's target audience no doubt already knew.
Have you heard of Hatsune Miku?
Now, after Domino's Japan released this ad back in 2013, Western media outlets were ruthless in their coverage. Metro UK called it one of the most unhinged adverts of all time, Crunchyroll called it hilariously stilted, and Rocket News 24 called it fantastically cringeworthy. In short, virtually every outlet who wrote about the Domino's Miku ad seemed to reach the same conclusion. This advertisement was a disaster, a failure of an ad that utterly missed the mark. Internet commenters, on the other hand, myself included, generally approached the ad with a lot less hostility and a lot more love. But even they seemed to agree that Scott seemed confused and out of place. But speaking as the human being who has possibly spent more time thinking about this ad than anybody else on Earth, I gotta say, I have long harbored doubts about this narrative. There have been times where I wondered, what if this ad was funny on purpose? In other words, what if this ad is self-aware? Now, this is a fun theory to speculate about, but here's the issue. As the presumed sole native English speaker on set that day, the only person on the planet who could likely answer this question for me is Scott, president of Domino's Pizza. That's actually a large part of why I've always wanted to meet the guy. Not only would it be an honor to shake the hand of this icon, but Scott would be able to tell me things about the making of this commercial that no one else on the planet ever could. Here's the problem though. I simply cannot find him. Scott is a virtually impossible man to track down. Outside of his pair of public appearances in Domino's Japan's ads, the Miku commercial, and the lesser-known but still excellent Domino's Moon Base video.
Now in closing, my fellow Earthlings, may I say to you, Yume wa miru mono janaku, kanaeru mono dakara.
Scott seems to be a very private individual. I'm not exaggerating when I say I've been trying to speak with Scott for over 4 years now. My first attempt to contact him was in October 2017 when, in search of an explanation for why the Miku ad vanished from the Domino's channel, I reached out to every single permutation of Scott's name that I could think of and just blindly emailed Domino's Japan addresses. That did not work. When that failed, I began to develop increasingly elaborate ways to meet this man, including one plan that involved staking out the Japanese river where Scott reportedly takes his morning walk every day and ambushing him. But for obvious reasons, I decided not to go through with that one. I kept banging my head against this problem for months, which eventually culminated in me taking an international flight to Tokyo, where I visited the Domino's Japan HQ. Hi, I'm visiting Mr. Olkers? Scott Olkers? Is he here? And discovered that Scott had vacated both the country of Japan and his role as the Domino's CEO, having retired to the United States to spend more time with his family. Now, at the time of my trip to Japan, this was not public info. It wasn't on LinkedIn, it wasn't anywhere. It hadn't been officially announced. Thus, I concluded, the disappearance of the Domino's app featuring Hatsune Miku commercial could be explained by the disappearance of its central figure, Scott K. Olkers. Suffice to say this, interviewing Scott has always been my white whale. I've dreamed, as in literally dreamed, at night in bed, about somehow securing a sit-down interview with this man. The reason I'm telling you all this is because I want you to know I tried. I really, really tried. For years, you guys have been asking me to hunt down Scott, and I've bit my tongue, holding out hope that I could somehow, someway make it work. I sincerely did everything within my power to make a sit-down with Scott happen, but the reality is that not everyone out there wants to be interviewed. Some people simply aren't comfortable on camera, or heavily value their privacy, or just plain don't feel like answering a barrage of questions from some random guy on YouTube. So it pains me to say it, but after a while, I kind of stopped trying. Satisfied that I'd done my best and not wanting to bother the man anymore, I shelved this idea and kind of forgot about it. Then, 2 years ago, something happened. Something that I have not told any of you about yet. Let me set the scene. It's August 19th, 2019, super late at night. I'm laying in bed, staring at my phone, when I see a DM from a private Instagram account that I don't recognize. This mysterious stranger's message contains no text whatsoever, and one image, blurred by Instagram for my protection. Cautiously, I unblur the image, and what I see makes me bolt upright in bed. The image, it turns out, is a screenshot. A screenshot of a text message conversation between this unknown sender and a man named Scott O. Presumably, Scott, former president of Domino's Pizza Japan. Holy shit. The conversation is brief, just 2 messages. The sender asks, "Did Domino's Pizza Japan take down the Hatsune Miku commercial because you retired?" And Scott's reply, "Yes." On reading this, my heart jumps into my throat. Could this be real? I take a deep breath, cautious not to get too excited. After all, this would be a really easy thing to fake. It's just an iPhone screenshot. Then again, something in my gut tells me this is legit. I mean, first of all, the iMessage contact photo for Scott includes a photo of him, and as somebody who's spent an alarming amount of time and energy stalking this dude, it should mean something when I tell you this was not a photo of Scott I'd ever seen before. This was new. I begin freaking out, and quickly it becomes clear that tonight I'm not going to be getting much sleep. I have so many questions for this person, but also I don't want to scare this guy off. Assuming any of this is real, who is this guy? How does he know Scott? Like, I have so many things I want to ask, so I take a moment to compose myself. And trying to hold back my skepticism, I respond, and then, after what feels like an eternity, a notification slides down from the top of my screen. He's my dad. I almost dropped my phone upon receiving this message. His dad? After years of searching for Scott, could it actually have happened that his son stumbled across my video? That this lead fell right in my lap? The account's private, so I send a follow request, and I wait. And while I wait, I take a closer look at the profile. The display name on the account is Mark Olkers, and looking closely at the small pixelated photo, it didn't take a lot of imagination to see him as a younger version of Scott. After a while, this person accepts my follow request, upon which I began frantically scrolling through his profile looking for evidence, for something truly conclusive. And then, I find this. A photo of Mark Olkers at a Minnesota Vikings game standing next to, in all his glory, Scott. Sure, he's dressed a bit more casually than we're used to seeing him, but it's him, undeniably, with that same mischievous glimmer in his eye. This was deeply surreal. I could not believe this was happening. Here I've been trying to track this dude down for years, and then, after basically giving up, a direct line of contact to the man himself suddenly falls right in my lap. It felt completely absurd. The conversation continued. "So nice to meet you, thanks for reaching out." Mark: "I just saw your vid for the first time last night, and I had to." Me: "Ha, what did you think of the video?" Mark: "I worked in that office one summer, so it was awesome. I don't know if my dad has seen it yet, but I'll show him." Now, I spoke with Mark, fishing for an interview with his dad, and a couple weeks passed without hearing anything back. So a little bit later, I nudged him, and he told me this. "Hey, I talked to him last week, and he actually told me he had seen your video before and thought it was really funny. I mentioned the interview to him, but he didn't really say much about it. I'll bring it up again and see what he says." Now again, I waited, and again, I didn't hear back. And I'm not oblivious, right? It doesn't take a ton of reading between the lines here to conclude that Scott maybe didn't seem that interested in chatting with me. And so, with that option off the table, I decide I'm gonna try a different tactic. And I set my sights on something else. If speaking with Scott directly is not an option, my thinking was that maybe Mark could help me understand how his father felt about his internet infamy. I needed to know, how had Mark come across my video? And what did he make of his father's overnight internet fame? So I decide that I'm going to try and meet Mark Olkers, son of Scott Olkers, in person. Out of options and desperate for some sort of resolution, I booked a ticket and got on a plane to Texas in search of answers. Before I know it, I've arrived in Dallas. I check into the Airbnb I rented, drop off my things, and touch base with Mark, who agrees to meet me at a local taco restaurant. Later that evening, I find myself halfway through an Uber ride, minutes away from meeting Mark Olkers. This is a weirdly nerve-wracking moment. I mean, here I am, en route to a restaurant in the middle of Texas, preparing to meet and interview the progeny of my idol, Scott Olkers. Mark had been cordial in our communication, but I didn't truly know how he felt about me, about some internet man obsessed with his dad who broke into his place of work and posted about it on YouTube. I even wondered, was Mark afraid of me? And if he was, could you blame him?
Drop off Nick on the left.
Yeah, here it is. Thank you very much.
Alright, you have a good day.
You too.
Good night.
Yeah, good night. Now wanting badly to put Mark at ease as much as possible, I make a choice. I decide for once to set down my camera and simply meet Mark face to face before we record. Before long, Mark arrives at this restaurant and I introduce myself to Mark and his wife and we chat for a few minutes. And eventually I ask Mark if it's okay for me to ask him a few questions on camera. Graciously, he says yes. So I guess the main thing I want to know is like how you first found the video. Do you remember?
Yeah, so a few weeks ago, right before I reached out to you, my buddy texted me because he discovered the Hatsune Miku video and found out that it was kind of internet meme and everyone was loving it. So it got me, I'd looked at all the videos on YouTube about it before, so I went back, started watching them, rewatching them, and I came across your video that had a ton of views, and so I watched it. And we thought it was really funny, and over the next couple of days, all my friends' houses I went to, I would show them this video, we'd watch the whole 15-minute thing. I was like, should I message this guy? Tell him that I really like his video. They're like, yeah, you should do it. So I messaged you, and then I ended up talking to my dad about it, and he said that he knew which video I was talking about when I brought up the Hatsune Miku videos on YouTube, and so he said he really loved it. So
that is an honor. Now the conversation is going well, it's totally pleasant and very interesting, but it's more or less what I expect. And then, while we're chatting, Mark drops a tidbit that absolutely blows my mind, a fact that totally reframes everything I think I know about Scott, president of Domino's Pizza. Listen.
Yeah, so in the 90s, my dad was working for Domino's in Taiwan, and I don't know all the background to how he got involved in the commercials, but he kind of became the face of Domino's on TV, and he was on all these commercials.
Wait. Does that mean there's more? For years, we'd all been operating under the assumption that Scott's on-camera career began in Japan with a Miku ad. But according to his son, that assumption was wrong. Scott had apparently been appearing in Domino's promotional material going back nearly 20 years.
He was on all these commercials that were Mission Impossible themed, Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon themed, all these popular 90s pop culture things they would do, videos that had those themes. So it was really cool seeing him in those commercials a few years ago, picking that back up in Japan, doing the Hatsune Miku and the Moon April Fool's joke.
It's just incredible to me to learn, because I literally didn't know until we sat down here that there's actually a decades of legacy of Scott doing amazing pizza commercials. I feel like it's a whole, uncovering a whole deeper layer of the predecessors to the Miku thing.
Yeah.
It's an incredible revelation.
Now, if you know me, you know that my first thought is absolutely a desperate, overwhelming desire to get my hands on these commercials. The idea of seeing a fresh-faced young Scott Olkers doing Taiwanese parodies of 90s movies sounds too good to be true. But how would one even go about finding some commercials that aired on terrestrial television in Taiwan in the 1990s? I literally wouldn't even know where to start to hunt for these things. Incredibly though, Mark had a solution for me. It turns out, over 10 years ago, Scott himself had actually uploaded the commercials privately to his personal Facebook page. And better still, Mark let me watch them. So, it brings me immense pleasure to share with you right now, for the first time ever on YouTube, an exclusive look at these long-lost Scott Domino's Pizza ads from the 1990s. Enjoy.
香 Q 外皮，鲜嫩多汁，加上酸酸甜甜的酱料，这就是 barbecue 零零鸡。还有热腾腾的达美乐披萨，丰富配料，香浓浓 cheese。
Barbecue 零零鸡披萨餐，只要399。达美乐打了没？222，我2。
Oh my gosh.
In this moment, I can't believe my eyes. I mean, here we have Scott, our Scott, visibly younger with a full mustache, speaking fluent Mandarin Chinese, and enthusiastically participating in commercials just as bizarre as the Miku ad, if not even sillier. There's the James Bond parody that you just saw, but it didn't stop there. Mark also shows me a Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon parody. And also, whatever this is. I was speechless. Now, obviously, this is a huge revelation. But I still have one major question.
The thing that I've always been curious about is, because the text message, you asked him if Domino's Japan took it down because of his retirement, right? And he said yes. But what I can't figure out is, does he know that that's true, do you think? Or does he think it's true because I said it was true in my video? Because I wasn't 100% sure, I was kind of just guessing.
That's a good question.
I guess it's something
maybe both. I don't know if he ever had a conversation with anyone about it.
Right.
But maybe he just inferred the new CEO is coming in, so they want to clean all references to him or whatever. Give him a blank slate.
Yeah. I guess that's something I would have to ask him though, if he knew the answer to.
Now, as you can probably tell from that clip, I never really stopped fishing for an interview with Scott. After our conversation, Mark and his wife graciously offered to give me a ride back to my Airbnb, and it's there I make one last-ditch effort to get my dream interview.
I'll find out when he gets back in town, and I'll talk to him. When do you leave?
I think I'm staying in the Airbnb till Friday right now. But I mean, I haven't even bought my ticket yet. I've gotten into the habit of buying really last-minute flights, so I'm pretty flexible, honestly.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I wouldn't
bad on it. Of course.
I wouldn't plan your trip around it.
No.
Yeah, I'll talk to him.
Sure. I appreciate it.
Yeah.
Mark and his wife drop me off, and as I watch them drive away, my main feeling is relief. Sure, I didn't get to meet Scott, but at least I could go to sleep at night feeling like I had tried everything in my power to do so. And there really is some satisfaction in that feeling. For the next few days, Mark and I stay in touch via text, and confession, I even holed up in my Dallas Airbnb a couple extra days, ordering pizza and just watching movies, in the hopes that Scott might come around on the idea and that the interview would somehow come together. Sadly, it did not. As for whether or not I'll get to interview Scott someday, who knows? In one of my final text exchanges with Mark, he told me that he talked to his dad, and his dad said he'd be down to meet me, but he was busy today and leaving town tomorrow. So I went home empty-handed. And maybe he meant it. Maybe Scott meant it when he told his son he'd be down to chat with me someday, or maybe he was just being polite. I even cajoled Scott's email address out of Mark and shot my shot, hoping that he would hear my plea, but haven't heard back yet. So, while I didn't get to meet Scott, I still feel like this was a successful adventure. I got to meet Mark, who found me in the craziest, most roundabout way ever. I got to talk to Mark about his dad. Mark opened my eyes to this whole other world where Scott was apparently a minor celebrity in Taiwan. So yeah, do I still have a lot of questions for Scott? Absolutely. But